Hello, this is Ivan Stubbs, and I'm your host today for Winning Ways. It is a delight to go out into the community and meet all kinds of people. I'll tell you, there are some interesting folk in Ingham County, and so I have interviewed politicians and store owners, and here is probably one of the neatest, uniquest persons that I've run across here in Ingham County. I am at the traditional archery shop in Potterville, Michigan, and the owner of this fine establishment is Ron LaClair. And Ron LaClair is a man that's known all over the state in hunting circles as a man that shoots with a longbow. Now, I like to hunt myself, but I've never hunted with a longbow, and I think my talents might not be in that area, but by talking with Ron and being in the shop, I'm getting a little interest to see if maybe I could do that. But Ron, I have been around a lot of hunters. I grew up in Virginia and came to Michigan and hunted all my life, and I think you're the first longbow traditional hunter that I have run across. Tell me, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the people where you went to school? Why don't you give us some background, and we'd like to just get to know Ron LaClair.
Well, I was born right here in Lansing, Michigan, quite a number of years ago, and went to school, kind of hip-hopped all around the state. My folks moved around a lot, so I went to school all over the place. But from my very earliest days, I was always interested in bows and arrows, and longbows in particular. I had a fascination for the story of Robin Hood. And it probably was because at an early age my mother used to read to me at night at bedtime, and one of the books that she read was the story of Robin Hood, and that fascinated me. So it was something that stayed with me all through my life, and I started shooting the bow at a very early age, and just have always done it.
Well, Ron, I remember, I think it was on one of the outdoor shows, of a man shooting an aspirin out of the air with a longbow. Was that you?
Probably, yeah.
Can you believe that? Can you just imagine folks shooting an aspirin and hitting it with a longbow without sights and just letting that arrow fly? And this is the man that can do that. And so, Ron, you have a business here in Potterville, and there are mounts of all types of animals that you have hunted and shot in the past. And what led you to this, and bring us up to date on how you got started in business?
Well, like I said, I've always had an interest for shooting the bow, and I started bow hunting in 1955, and then around 1970 is when the compound bow came out. Well, the compound to me didn't look like the romantic bow of old that I was used to and in love with. So it never really appealed to me. So I stuck to my regular bows, my longbows and recurves. And then about 1980, as I was approaching retirement time from Oldsmobile, I decided to start a little business, traditional archery business, just something to keep me busy after I retired from Olds, which I did in 1985. Well, the business grew and flourished, and the interest in traditional archery grew. And at this point in time, we have a Michigan Longbow Association, which I am the founder and the president of, and was founded in 1983. We have close to 500 members in the state. 500 members that are shooting the longbow? Shooting the longbow. We have our publication, which I showed you, we call the Stick Talk, and stories of our members' adventures in hunting and so forth. And it's something that is very enjoyable, and I think what brings people to it, most of the people that are shooting traditional archery today are not like myself, who has always shot traditional archery, but they are people who we say have gone full circle. They started out maybe shooting recurves at an early age, and then graduated to the compound bow and the high-tech scene, and then gradually they tired of the high-tech and went back to the simpler, more basic types of archery and bow hunting, because for some people in that field is more challenging. They're looking for a greater challenge, and actually, I think, I have been told anyway, that shooting a longbow or recurve is actually more fun shooting arrows than it is with the high-tech equipment.
Well, why don't you I have a longbow in my hand. Why don't you, there might be people who are watching today who don't really understand what you mean, longbow, compound, and maybe they know you. And anyway, why don't you just take the bow here and kind of give us an explanation of what you're talking about
Well,
here.
this is called a longbow, but in actuality it's a short longbow, kind of a contradiction in terms, because this is, although longbows do go out as long as 6 foot long, like Robin Hood's bow, the English longbow, this is a short version of a longbow.
Robin Hood shot a 6-foot bow.
6 foot between the nocks, yes.
So that means if I'm here, his bow from ground to about the top of my head is how long? That was quite a...
Yeah.
Boy, when you look at the movies of Robin Hood, they don't have that big 6-foot bow out there, do they?
Well, oh yeah, they do. If you go back and look at the old reruns, you'll see they had.
Oh, the old, okay.
You know, they had a long bow. In fact, we've got one back here that maybe we can look at in a few minutes here. But this was designed as a shorter version for hunting, and it's very light in weight, as you noticed. But a bow of this simple design is probably pretty much basically the same design as the very first bows that man hunted with. And we don't know how old bows and arrows are. We don't know when they were invented. We just know that they're many, many years old and have always been used for hunting and for protection and so forth. So
now, I wouldn't think you would put sights and peep sights and all that. If you weren't going traditional, you'd probably want to shoot instinctive.
Right, and these bows adapt very well for instinctive shooting. And a lot of people today think that they can't shoot instinctively, that they need the sights, when in fact...
what do you mean by instinctive? Explain that.
Instinctive is shooting without the aid of sights, or just shooting kind of by the seat of your pants, just looking and pointing the bow at something and looking at the target and shooting.
You don't aim down the arrow and put the head of the broadhead somewhere on the deer?
It's called eye-hand coordination. If you're looking at something, you can actually point the arrow at it, just like pointing your finger. If you look at an object, point your finger at it. Don't take your eyes off the object. Just look at it. And then take your eyes away and sight down your finger. You'll find your finger is exactly on that object, because your eyes tells you where to point your finger. And that's basically the way that instinctive bows are shot, just with eye-hand coordination. And it's an ability that we all have, that just needs a little practice and a little refinement to be able to use for shooting and hunting with this kind of bow.
The thing that I noticed in compound is when the poor lighting conditions, I can't see through my peep sight, and my thought was, if I could shoot instinctive, it would be easier to go out there and hunt. Then you would think that the compound with all the high-tech stuff would make it easier, but it's made it harder, especially when the lighting goes down. Can't you shoot at something instinctive easier than I could with a peep sight in low lighting conditions?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
So it seems like you would have the advantage, and you would probably have less chance of wounding that animal than I, trying to figure out where he is in the dark there.
Yeah, but instinctive shooting, like I said, takes more practice. You have to hone that ability. You have to do a lot of shooting, get to know your bow, get to know the feel of the bow. And as you do that, all that memory is stored in your brain, and then your brain acts sort of like a computer. So when it's called upon to perform under hunting circumstances, the information is all there, in all of your calculations of elevation, and everything is all stored in the brain, and all you have to do is look at the spot that you want to hit, and that's where the arrow goes. You
know, there's another attribute or a characteristic to Ron that a lot of people don't know, and that he writes poems, and probably one day he's going to publish a book of poems. But Ron, I think I read just before we started filming today, one on the miracle. Why don't you read that, because it's right in line with what we're talking about, this instinctive shooting. Can you imagine just looking up and seeing that aspirin and shooting it out of the air? Or how about flipping up a dime? And so you have a poem. Why don't you read that? Give us the title.
The title of my poem is The Age-Old Miracle, and it's the subject is shooting instinctively at targets in the air. And of course, I've shot at aspirins, but we also shoot at other targets. And what we normally start out with is a styrofoam disc that we throw in the air and shoot at that. So the poem goes, a 10-inch disc arcs through the air. He points and shoots the bow. How the arrow finds its mark, I really do not know. To me it is a mystery I cannot comprehend, the trail the arrow travels to the bullseye at its end. In this age of marvels and scientific feats, the human brain can calculate where arrow and target meets. Through no plan of ours, the Creator made it so, this wonderful exhibit of a man shooting a bow. People ask me lots of times, how do you do that? How do you hit an aspirin? And I really don't have an answer. So it is a mystery how I can hit, or anyone else can hit, a target in the air with an arrow just simply by looking at it. So it's a mystery.
Well, it's a phenomenon. You mentioned Creator in your poem, and I ran across the scripture that says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And, you know, the big bucks that are being made now, the big money is in the computer industry. And it's that ability to gather all that information on a small little disk, and yet our Creator gave us that ability to compute and to, it is just amazing then what the human being can do with a little practice.
Sure.
Putting together God-given gifts and a lot of good hard work, a lot of good things can be accomplished. Well, Ron, what would you suggest? How can a person become successful? If I would say to you, listen, I wouldn't mind trying my hand to see if I could be successful at longbow shooting, longbow hunting, what would be the start? How would I get started?
Well, you can start probably by coming here, and we can look at some equipment and talk about it, and let you try out a couple of bows, and go from there and decide what's going to fit you and what works best for you.
So your advice on the instinctive is just whatever you point out, shoot it, and how is that how you?
That's my advice, and you know, there are books and even videos tapes available today teaching that very same thing on instinctive shooting, and how really basic and simple it is. But you know, there's a few fine points that they cover on styles, different styles and form on instinctive shooting. But those are available in tapes and books.
Okay, so come and get equipment and start practicing, and come back to someone like you and ask lots of questions. Well, Ron, what about, you know, the title of this show is Winning Ways, and we could get into hunting, we could go a lot of directions with that title, but why don't we just go with the business? What would you suggest if a person was tired of working at Oldsmobile, we'll say, and they wanted to own their own business? What advice would you give them?
Well, my advice would be, if you're tired of working at Oldsmobile, that's one thing, but hang on, because there's some pretty good jobs at Oldsmobile, and they have a pretty good retirement plan.
Okay.
I worked there for 30 years, and I have no regrets. It was a wonderful place to work. It supplied everything I needed for my family to coming up in those 30 years. But after my 30 years, I wanted to get into my own business. I was fortunate enough to be able to take advantage of that early retirement plan. And my suggestion would be to anyone who is in that position where they maybe have worked somewhere and it's approaching retirement time, and they want to retire, but they really don't know what they're going to do after they retire, if they're just going to travel around and see the country or whatever. There's some point in time where you're going to have to settle down and do something with the rest of your life. And then I would say take advantage of your interest and your hobbies, whether it be traditional archery or golf or bowling or making dolls or whatever. Take advantage of that and turn it into a business, because if you have the interest and the talent, the God-given gift and the ability to do these things, you can use that to fill your time and make it make a little money on top of that. So
what you're saying is, don't pick some boring thing to do just to make money. Go with something you like and enjoy it, and hopefully make money on top of that.
right. I mean, you have to have an interest in something to start with to really be able to pour yourself into it. You have to have a passion for what you're doing.
Okay.
And if you don't have that, you won't be successful. So you have to choose something that you really have a passion for.
Okay, if I've picked that, I know what I want. Let's say I like to golf, and I'm going to start. What are some other tips that you can give me if I'm going to be a winner at developing my hobby and into a business?
Well, when you start, I would guess that when you start dealing with people on a business basis, it was kind of new for me to start out with. In my biggest thing that I guess I wanted to do when I started in business was to please people. Make them, if they came to me and needed something, I wanted to be sure that they got what they needed and what they wanted. And after that, it just kind of grew as I started pleasing people. Then more people came, and so I guess that would be the number one thing is, you've heard the old saying, the customer's always right.
Okay.
And make sure that that always applies in your business, and please the customer, and he'll be back and he'll bring a friend with him.
Okay, we are right here in Potterville. We're talking with Ron LaClair of the Traditional Archery Shoppe, and we're talking about going back to the romance of shooting the bow, getting thrilled because the bow and the man becoming one, and there's all kinds of neat things right here in this shop. And so, Ron, why don't we move to another spot? And you have so many interesting things here. Let's show the people, and maybe you have some stories behind some of the objects that you have here in your shop, right here in Potterville. Ron, when I was in Adrian, I had a man suggest to me that I go bow hunting with him. And I turned him down because I thought that, this guy's out there in the woods playing Robin Hood, and the very thought of going out in the woods to shoot a deer without a gun was just too much for me to handle. And he says, no, come on over and try. And so he brought me over to his house and gave me an extra compound bow, and within a half hour I was shooting a pretty close grouping, which was saying, I started saying to myself, hey, I think I can do this. And so I went hunting, and within a couple years I shot a deer with a bow. But now, being here and thinking about taking a longbow out in the woods, I get the same feeling that I had when that guy was suggesting that I go out into the woods with a compound. The thought of going out there with a longbow, without sights, and just going instinctive, it makes me think that I might not eat much venison. But when I look around your shop and I see the Indian hairdressers, the dress, and the pictures, there's a real correlation between bow hunting and the longbow and Indians. Why don't you give us some background along that lines?
Well, I think the Indians, or the Native Americans as they're called, we're all aware of them because they were so recent in our history, and depicted in a lot of the Western movies that we see. And of course, the Indians, prior to the white man giving them the guns, took all their game with their bows and arrows, and so that's why a lot of people today like to emulate that, use the same kind of bows that the Indians used, and hunt in the styles that they did. But to me, bow hunting is just more of a challenge. It seems to be, it's not, the importance of it is not on taking the game as much as just the experience of being out there in nature, pitting your skills against white-tailed deer or even cottontail rabbits, whatever you're after. It seems to be a natural thing to do. And it's a plan that God had for us from the beginning when we had to hunt that way. Of course, now we don't have to hunt that way. We can go down to the supermarket and get our supper. But in some of us, there is still instilled that feeling that we want to get out close to nature and pursue the animals the way our forefathers did. It's very rewarding and very challenging. And of course, if you do it with the high-tech modern weapons of today, I think it takes something away from the history of bow hunting. And whereas if you do it with a bow that is more in the style of the bows that of old, then you're just reenacting what our forefathers did in the way they hunted.
Okay, I would have to. I've got the urge to try to shoot instinctive and to go hunting, and I think I could be successful with a lot of work. But when I look around, you have inspired me with all of the different animals that you have been able to gather with a longbow. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to let Ron talk about the various things that he has on his wall. There's a history behind each of these items, and I think you'll be interested. So Ron, why don't you just start off with this big creature right above our heads, the caribou here.
Well, the caribou is an animal, of course, it's not native to Michigan. This animal was taken in 1986 on a hunt in northern Quebec. And that was a very interesting hunt for me because we were in the far reaches of Quebec where our guides were native Eskimos, and they still live in somewhat of a primitive fashion in parts of there. So it was very interesting to go there and hunt this type of an animal, and it was very rewarding when I brought him home, and it was not an easy hunt by any means.
This was with a longbow?
This was with a longbow, yeah. The actual day that I took this animal, we were in a boat going up the river, myself and a friend with our native guide, and these two bull caribou swam across the river, and very close to us. And of course, it wasn't sportsmanlike to shoot them in the water, so I told the guide, I said, we'll wait till they get to the shore, which was about 30 yards away, and when they get out of the water and kind of shake themselves off and walk away, maybe we'll get a shot. Well, as it turned out, as soon as they hit the shore, they took off running like quarter horses. They just,
wow.
But somehow I drew in my, as we talked before about our instinctive shooting, you know, how the brain calculates everything. All I did is I concentrated on the caribou as I drew, and my brain gave me the lead and everything in the elevation. I swung out in front and made the shot, and it was a perfect shot, and the animal went about 50 yards beyond that and was down. So, and they're wonderful eating, by the way.
Wow. Well, I've got to hand it to you. That's quite a
and it makes an attractive mount to have in the shop. And also the bear up there, I go to Canada, to Ontario every spring on a bear hunt up there. I've been doing that for quite a number of years. I have a lot of admiration and respect for black bears. They're a very intelligent animal, and I just like to see them. I've taken a few, and they're a lot of fun to hunt with the longbow.
You don't get frightened that they'll come after you shoot them?
No. Well, if you look at the statistics, there's never been an instance that I've ever heard of where a hunter was attacked by a bear after he shot him. So it would be a very rare thing.
Okay.
So
it's not dangerous to hunt a bear with a longbow then?
No.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
Okay. Now you have a boar. Is that? Tell us about a boar hunt.
Well, the boar was taken quite a number of years ago on a hunt down south, and in that instance we used dogs to chase the boar and bring them to bay. And that particular boar, they're probably more dangerous than the black bear because they will come after you. As we approached that particular boar, he was surrounded by dogs, or he had dogs that brought him to bay, but as soon as he saw me approach at about 20 feet, he turned and squared off and started toward me just as I shot. And the only shot I had was a head-on shot, and it hit him in the forehead and put him down.
Wow.
And so that was hopefully a lucky shot, but
Well, it was a good shot.
anyway, it was him or me in that situation.
Okay, so I see recurves hanging here. Are recurves very close to the longbow then?
They're closely related. Yeah, the longbow in the history of the bow in America, the longbows came first, and then the recurves developed after that. Actually, the recurves will go way back to the Turks invented the recurve bow years and years ago, and so different cultures had different bows at different times.
Wow. Well, we are right here at the traditional archery shop in Potterville, talking with the owner, Ron LaClair, and just hearing insight and background into the longbow. And you have been viewing some various scenes of the past where Ron has been involved in shooting, and no doubt it just has mystified you how someone could be so accurate. And my purpose is to putting on the show is for you to get to meet the people in the community, for me to get to meet people in the community, and to develop a sense of community. The last 5 letters of the word community is unity. And there's nothing like a business that's operating without strife, harmony and unity. People in the community were really working together, pulling together, and supporting one another, whether it be personal or whether it be business. And so it's my hope that this type of show supports a fellow like Ron and his business, and it's my goal to promote just real unity and harmony within the community. And Ron, as I have been listening to you talk, and I guess I cannot help but be here and think about the past and roots and where we came from, and thinking about that and appreciating that and giving some thought to people who have laid some foundation for us today. And so the Bible has a theme all the way through it that the Lord is constantly encouraging people to be grateful, and to be thankful, and to be grateful, and to be thankful. And so when I think about where we have been, and what I see is there's a real appreciation for the past here. And so I want to be a man that's grateful, and you look to me, and as I have talked to you, you have a real appreciation for those who have gone on before us. Thank you for staying tuned and listening, and I hope that you have enjoyed the show today.